Hi everybody and welcome to the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey and as always I'm joined by Sam Proof. Today on the show we're talking all about the new version of OBS Studio and some of the exciting new features, but also some of the upgrade considerations. So are you an early adopter when it comes to technology? Are you ready to upgrade, or do you like to test these things out a little bit and check for that plug-in compatibility? That's something we're going to unpack today on the show. But Sam, how are you? How are you doing? How's your week been?
Good. Yeah, I've been doing this influencer manager job for Barrier 4, and it's kicking up into like the deliverables phase of a lot of assets going back and forth. So I'm like right in the middle of like, okay, this goes out to this creator, and this is coming in, and this has to go to the brand, and here's notes, and so I'm like kind of hectic, and you know, but it's a good kind of hectic, I suppose. So not worrying about other things. Dun dun dun. How's everything with you?
Everything's going okay with me. It is one of those fun things though that because of the way we changed how we did this show, like there's a million things for me to
Yeah.
test before we go live. So hopefully they'll all work, but I guess we'll find out in a moment. And hello to Saeed, and I just realized I hadn't clicked on something else, so I can't show Saeed's comment, but he's saying hello from
Oh
Germany.
no.
But yeah, no, everything's good. We're still finding our feet here a little bit, but we're going to get stuck into today's content. We are going out live to all the various places though, including I'm going out live on Twitch, which I never go live out on Twitch. So in the
Oh.
very unlikely event that anybody's watching from Twitch, let me know that you're there. Okay, so let's get stuck into today's subject matter though. Press another tab, another button on the old Stream Deck. And of course, we're going to be talking about OBS Studio 30.2, and I believe it's 30.2.2 is currently out at the moment.
Yep.
Hello to Raindrops and Ripples, who is watching, I think over on your Twitch channel.
Yeah,
And
that's
Roy
mine.
Kowalski, who's watching from Sydney. Great to have your company here today. But we are talking about OBS Studio, and I know this is a piece of software that some people in our audience use and some people are a little bit scared of, but don't worry too much. We're going to unpack some of the options that you have for you today. And I guess, Sam, in terms of new features, and I should have done this earlier, but I'm going to do this as I speak right now, just going into the back end and finding the release notes from on GitHub. I guess there are a few things that and Saeed's already mentioning something we'll definitely talk about today about using a second portable instance of OBS for testing. And I know Saeed actually told me that there's a particular plugin that he often uses that isn't particularly compatible. So that's something to be aware of. But let's just talk about, what are some of those new features that are coming to this version. And I guess, first of all, hybrid MP4 is a big one.
Yeah.
So this is a new version of the MP4 format that can include things like chapter markers, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that actually works. I guess what I was really interested in testing out yesterday was what video editing software actually supports this sort of natively at the moment. And it looks like DaVinci Resolve does. I believe Premiere does, although I didn't personally test that. A lot of the more basic video editing software, Camtasia doesn't, CapCut Desktop certainly doesn't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a nice feature. I mean, the great thing about it, though, is if you use the hybrid format, it doesn't seem to be a problem for any traditional video editing software. They can still read it as a normal MP4 video file, but they just won't have those extra features.
Right. Um, yeah, I mean it's pretty cool. Like for everyone who's had issues in the past with OBS doing the default, which is my God, I'm totally blanking. MKV.
Yes.
It's some order of those letters. Yeah, this is a more traditional MP4, which, as John said, yeah, you get the benefit of the new chapter markers feature being usable. In fact, it is the only format that you can use the chapter markers in. But also, it is a much like the MKVs. If something fails, if OBS crashes or something else goes wrong, it will fragment and save up to that point, at least in theory, so that you don't lose all of that progress, which is great.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to screen share. So this is the release information on GitHub, and you can find this from obsproject.com if you want to. There's a whole bunch of changes and fixes, but I guess the new features is perhaps what we want to look at. I might even just see if I can make this a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And I guess the Twitch component of this is really interesting, Sam, and I'll probably need you to unpack some of this for me because I don't know a great deal about it. But they've added support for multi-track video streaming. So on Twitch, this is known as enhanced broadcasting. And it looks like you've got the ability to support different audio channel configurations, and I think also have a bit of a video on demand as a separate feed on Twitch. I'm probably blindsiding you a little bit with this question, but
Yeah, I'm like a good 20% knowledgeable on this particular thing. But basically, previously, unless you were a partner and maybe affiliate, I'm not positive. Whatever you were streaming at was what your viewer was seeing at. So if you're streaming at 4K, your viewer needs to be able to receive that amount of the bit rate. They need to actually have a decent connection. This allows you to sort of stream multiple resolutions to that destination so that your viewers can be like, well, I can only handle a 480, and they can watch your 4K stream at a 480. Whereas before, if you were a partner or whatever, Twitch would handle that sort of decoding on their end. Now this is coming out of OBS. As far as I understand, in theory, this will increase some amount of the load that your computer puts out, but I'm not sure how much.
sure. And that's a really interesting thing, and I guess the thing that I like to explain to people, because I don't think it's always obvious, that if you're watching a video on demand on YouTube, what we generally recommend is that you upload the highest resolution, the quality that you can, and YouTube will actually make a few lesser versions for different people on different connection speeds, and you can actually go into the settings and pick different options. Like it will attempt to pick the one that it thinks is most appropriate for you. But again, you know, that's something that they do on their end, and I think it works really well for a lot of people.
Right.
It's interesting that Twitch have taken that other approach. Hello to Michelle J. Raymond, a friend of the show, who's saying, hey, it's Saturday, and it certainly is in this part of the world. I know it's still Friday with a lot of you, but it's great to have your company. So I guess when we've already spoken about it a little bit, but the other thing is this hybrid MP4 output, which is technically in beta. And again, all the things you just said about it being a little bit more stable in the event that your computer crashes, in theory. And again, I haven't had a great opportunity to test this out.
Right.
But that was the thing about that MKV format, is that if your computer did crash, there's a good chance you could retrieve what had been written to the disk in a way that traditional MP4s just didn't seem to work with. So the other thing is supporting the chapter markers, which is really interesting, and it's something I've been playing with a little bit even before this functionality was brought into this particular version of OBS Studio. And I guess the thing I might call out a little bit is just, I'm going to have to open up something on my computer to show you this, but if you do, I might even just temporarily go to another section over here, although I'm trying to demonstrate something on my Stream Deck while also using my Stream Deck, which is always fun. But anyway, this is the Stream Deck. So the thing about the Stream Deck is it gives you lots of buttons that you can press for all kinds of exciting things. If you do actually upgrade the OBS Studio plugins, you now have this chapter marker option. And this is really, really cool. So you can actually, and this is specifically for the ability to add these markers to an hybrid MP4 file. And again, the only thing I would say is I had a lot of difficulty upgrading to this version of the plugin, and in the end I had to uninstall the Stream Deck software and reinstall it for it to actually work. But hopefully you won't have that problem. And I guess generally speaking, what I would recommend is that you click on the little cog and go to the settings, go to your plugins, and just find it from the list and just check for updates there. Again, you know, that was just a little bit of a quirk, but essentially what we can do here is we can give our button on our Stream Deck a title, we can give it a name, and we can also do this auto number feature. So essentially, If I press this once, it'll say chapter 1. If I press it again, it'll be chapter 2. And
Mm.
potentially you can bring that into different pieces of video editing software to fix that up and make it all wonderful. But anyway, those are some of the more exciting features, I suppose, of this release. There have been a whole bunch of fixes for different things. I guess the other thing too is there have been some changes to the appearance, so the themes that you can actually use in OBS. And again, it's not something I spend a lot of time even looking at, but it might be something to keep in mind if you do like your
Right.
OBS to look in a particular way.
Yeah.
Seed does mention there was also an upgrade of the Stream Deck software itself, 6.7 since this week. So yes.
Oh, nice. I have not done that yet. Right.
So I guess
Well, and speaking of that, there's also been an upgrade to the A10 vertical plugin. So there's
yeah, I
updates
mean,
all over.
yeah, there's a lot actually. So just loving this comment from Stefan. So hi, Friday night in Sweden, but nowadays that is John and Sam time. Cheers. Thank you for joining us.
Nice.
Great to have your company on a Friday night. Yeah, so I mean there's a whole bunch of different things that are going on here. I guess the question is, and we have a whole segment on this in a little bit, but let's unpack it a little bit here now. Like, when would you upgrade? And maybe before we get to upgrading OBS, I'm just curious, Sam, how do you feel about being an early adopter when it comes to technology generally? Is it something that you run out and you grab the newest things as soon as you possibly can, or do you like to wait and see?
You know, sometimes it depends on the software. With OBS, particularly, I'll sit back. If it's like a big update, kind of like this one was, I definitely will sit back and make sure other people aren't having issues, because I have been that person that was like, oh great, shiny new upgrade, I'm in, and then something breaks and I'm like, oh, well, now I have to be the one that figures out how this gets fixed. So I'd rather spend a few days waiting, see everyone else go, this is broken, and then find the fix and then be ready with it. I'd rather have it, not need it, than need it and not be able to use OBS for 3 days. Right.
Yeah, yeah. That makes total sense. And I think in some ways, I'm an incredibly risk adverse person at the best of times, but generally speaking, technology has been pretty good to me. And there's only been one time since I started using OBS that it really did just cause a whole bunch of
Yeah.
issues and I had to start again. And in some ways, I don't think that was a big deal for me at that point in time because the way I was using OBS was quite simple. So it wasn't dramatically difficult for me to recreate those scenes and scene collections and things. But that said, if you do have a lot going on, if you're using a lot of plugins, if your setup is quite sophisticated, you probably want to hold off until somebody else, does some of those checks for you and just check out the plugin
Yeah.
compatibility. And that's a word I'm going to struggle with all day, I suspect. But anyway, Sayed makes the point that early
Right.
adopters are unofficial beta testers. So I think
Yes.
that's definitely true.
Exactly.
And again,
Yeah.
like Sayed's already alluded to the
And
fact
I'm
that,
totally fine with that when I'm doing something like the oh, sorry, John. I'm totally fine with being a beta tester when it comes to something like mix it up chatbot. But again, with OBS, or even there's like the iOS beta out there for Apple users or iPhone users. Those are two things that I need that to work. So I'm not messing around until it's an official release.
and yeah, that's definitely a consideration. So if you're just having fun, by all means, play with it to your heart's content. But if you know, I don't know, that you have a show on a Saturday morning that you definitely need to get
Right.
right, maybe resist that urge. But we're going to explore some of the ways you can try these things out ahead of time. And I guess the other point I would make is that as much as I love new technology, and I mentioned to say it a couple of weeks ago, I probably should have done some backups and do some testing, but I've only had one problem in the 2 or 3 years that I've been using this software that it's been an issue, and I went, what the hell, I'm just going to hit the update button and see what happens.
Yeah.
And it was fine for me so far. So I mean, touch wood, that's working out well. But again, it just depends on how elaborate your setup is, how many plugins you're potentially using, and if you are prepared to test that stuff out. And it's funny, I didn't actually ask Tanya about this on last week's show, but she did actually make a video quite recently about how she upgraded to a beta version of an Apple operating system and just everything fell
Yes.
apart.
That's what I've
So
heard.
yeah, so I must admit that that was the point I was trying to make earlier, was simply that I am happy to upgrade to official releases, but I'm not really going for those early pre-releases for testing. That's not really my jam. Let's just check in with
Yeah.
the chat. So good morning, John and Sam from the Philippines. I love that our audience is getting more and more global every single week. I love it. It's
Yeah.
so cool. Thank you for being here. Also giving the developers
Eventually
time to
we'll have
catch up.
every time zone. Yeah.
Yes, yes, all over the world, including some people
Yeah.
that probably should be asleep. So we appreciate
Yes.
that we're potentially ruining your health. So thank you for that. And Sade makes the point,
Yeah.
also giving the plugin developers time to catch up and maybe adopt
Yeah.
or upgrade the plugins to work too. That's definitely a thing to think about.
Yeah. And really this is the biggest issue with like an OBS update, is usually the plugins are the problem. And I recall when, like, I don't remember if it was one or two big releases ago, that's when I had major problems with it and I was like, never again. But it was related to plugins, and like yeah, you had to wait until like the developer could update it and then completely delete the original plugin and add the new one, and yeah, that was it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so again, I guess, we should probably take a step back just for the benefit of people that don't know what OBS Studio is. I know we're
Yeah,
talking
sure.
to a very specific crowd here, but just to give you some sense of how this actually works, OBS Studio is this free and open source software for video creation and live streaming. It's available for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and it is completely free. So the wonderful thing about all of this is it's not going to cost you any money. There is a little bit of a learning curve with some of this stuff, but it's not as bad as I think a lot of people would have you believe. And it's kind of my mission in life, and I think Sam's mission to some extent too, that
Mhm.
we try to unpack that this isn't as scary or as hard as it is as some people
Yeah.
might have you believe. So essentially, that's what it is, and we're just talking about the most recent version, because I guess the other thing is simply that you know you don't necessarily need to upgrade straight away. There's no potential security risk here. And the thing that you want to keep in mind is if you're already using it for a production or something where you've got a boss or a sponsor that's really relying on you, you probably want to hold off until you have a chance to do some testing and some backing up. So we're going to go back. We're
Yeah.
going to go and talk about that when we come back. But this is the video live streaming show. So thank you so much for being here.
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them.
Mm-hmm.
So when Johan would get on my counter before, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. He loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I talk to him and be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And that's a segment from Sam's podcast, Just Kidding Around, which you can learn more about over at cuteavalanche.com. And again, it helps if I press the button so you can see that URL on the screen. But just go to cuteavalanche.com. You don't need the entire URL, but I thought I'd throw that into the chat if you want to click more directly to get to it. So this is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking all about, OBS Studio version 30.2.2 specifically, and more generally about how we can actually make sure that if we are choosing to upgrade, that we don't run into too many problems, and some of the strategies that we might consider in terms of actually, making sure this is a smooth transition, essentially. So, what I will, incidentally, and I'm just gonna show you something really, really briefly. Sam's probably going to get really sick of me sharing my screen, but I've done this now. So
Yeah.
what you'll often see when there is a new version is that you'll be prompted with this new update that is available. And this is saying OBS Studio 30.2.2 is available. It does have some warnings. It does have some information about things that you might want to consider. And it's got those same sort of updates that we saw on the GitHub repository about the new features and the changes. You have these options down the bottom, so you can upgrade now, you can remind me later, or you can skip the version. In this case, I'm actually running a second portable version of OBS Studio, and I'll talk to you more about how that actually works in the next segment. But it is perfectly okay to say remind me later or just to X out of this box. So just keep that in mind. So that's something that I do want you to sort of be mindful of. But Sam, if we are, like, I guess, what does good backup look like for OBS Studio generally, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, OBS is primarily made up of your different profiles and scene collections. So obviously you want to try and back those up, and just, make sure you have a good architecture for your files and stuff like that, so that you always know that's where those things are. That's where those backups live. If you're doing something like Mix It Up, that's creating documents as well, keep those in, the same folders. Beyond that, one of the more common themes with OBS and breaking OBS is generally related to some of the more advanced functions like the WebSocket. So you want to make sure to document what your WebSocket settings are like, what your port number is, your IP number, your password, if you've dynamically generated that through OBS and stuff, and just have that in a local file that you can reference, so that if you do go in to create a new, an upgrade or something like that, and you notice that things are giving you errors or they're not working right, you can look back and be like, these are the settings that I need to make sure are accurate. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Saeed makes the point that, backups should be made on a regular basis regardless of upgrades,
Yes.
or you'll learn the hard way. I mean, that's definitely true, and it's a bit of a sore point for me because I had this beautiful NAS unit that just stopped working one day, and I've been deeply suspicious of them ever since. But I guess there are a few things to go back to in terms of what Sam was just saying. And potentially, I think in some ways the easiest thing to do is just to make a duplicate copy of your OBS Studio Pro folder and just put that somewhere. So if all those fails, you can copy those files back and just go from there. And you'll often find that on C program files, OBS Studio on a Windows computer. But again, it's not that difficult to find. But I guess the other thing too is OBS Studio by nature is quite modular. And there are potentially a lot of moving parts that you've added to it in terms of plugins and, I'm trying to think of what the other tools are actually called, scripts. And different things. And it probably is worthwhile, especially if you do have an elaborate production, to make sure that you're documenting what plugins you're actually using. And, because there is a slight chance that if you do add a new plugin, it could break other things. And at that point, you probably want to be mindful of what those files were that you added to your setup and be able to take them away. I guess the other thing too, Sam, and I've been thinking about this a lot this week because of a few things that you've said, but essentially, we do, and this is a portable version of OBS that I run just for demonstration purposes. So there's a whole lot of nothing going on here. So don't worry about that too much. But essentially what we have are scene collections with different scenes. And in those scenes, we'll have things like cameras and microphones and videos and audio and images and text and things. And you can organize these into different scene collections. So, if you have different things for different projects or different businesses, you can set these up individually. I don't even remember what half of these are, so I'm probably not going to switch to them now to show you. But the thing I do want to draw your attention to is that you do actually have these export options. So again, This is another great opportunity to periodically go in here and export this and save it somewhere as a JSON file that you can potentially take and sort of again, I should probably get my language right. You can actually import that after you've exported that. And I think in some ways, that's a really good thing to do. But also, if you own more than one computer, it's a little bit of insurance to sort of have these same sort of scene collections on multiple devices. So if anything does go awry, you've got somewhere else to turn to maybe go back and get your files.
Right. But keep in mind that OBS is not 100% transferable from Mac to PC and vice versa. But if you have two PCs or you have two Macs, by all means, yes, you should completely, clone your OBS from one computer to the other and set it up the same way for sure.
And Saeed mentions that that there is a backup plugin for scenes from. I'm going to struggle to pronounce that username. Can you help me out with that, Sam?
I'm gonna
Alexandro, I
say,
think. Yep.
oh, maybe Alexro. I don't know. Yeah,
He creates so many plugins.
It needs
and
more
he's
vowels.
a genius. But yes.
What does that one do? Is it just export all of them, or is it an auto backup? Because that's what it needs. This is my immediate number one gripe against OBS right now. Is it should just have an auto like weekly backup where it just goes like, hey, give me 2 minutes. I'm going to back up all your scene collections and profiles. I think that would be great.
And the thing, I'm very invested in the Google ecosystem. So most of my files, they live on my computer, but they technically live on Google Drive in the cloud. And sometimes, for whatever reason, it's not always available to me. There are times where I just need to restart my computer. Speaking of not being available, Sam's just disappeared on me, so that's sort of interesting. But hopefully he'll be back in a second. But anyway, the thing about that is sometimes I will actually have things like backgrounds and images and stuff from Google Drive, and if that doesn't sync properly, then when I open it up in OBS, those things are missing. So that's sort of another thing just to keep in mind. So those are a few different things. And I guess the other thing too, though, as much as we think upgrading and backing up and testing, all these things are amazing, but in some ways, what I'd encourage you to do is just get into the habit of creating and recreating your scene collections anyway, because I think that's a really valuable skill, because that'll give you a lot of confidence. So if something does go wrong, or if you start on a brand new computer, or you're trying to help somebody else on their computer, that's a really, really powerful skill to sort of cultivate. So we're going to come back. We'll talk about some more of those upgrading considerations and some testing that you might want to try and do. But this is the video and live streaming show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, I'm John Lacey, and in Build a Presentation Muscle, I want to talk about finding your voice, refining and sharing your message, using tools and technology to share that message, and looking after yourself as a creator.
Okay, so hopefully Sam's going to be back. I'm just going to press a button. There he is. Okay, he just had some internet issues, but that was a promo for my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, the podcast about showcasing your expertise through content creation, and you can learn more about that over at johnlacey.com. This is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking all about the latest version of OBS Studio, and also, what you might like to think about in terms of upgrade considerations. So we have touched on some of this already, Sam, but I think it is worth revisiting. So in some ways, if you're using OBS Studio and it does everything that you want it to do and you're not having any problems, do you think that it's worthwhile upgrading?
I mean, again, I would definitely wait, make sure there's nothing big breaking. Eventually, yes, you should probably update, because eventually, a few minor versions in, things could break just because, old plugins will no longer work and stuff like that. So it doesn't hurt to stay current. But yeah, you don't have to jump right on it. Like, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it until it is, or until, you're like 2 or 3 versions behind, then maybe try and catch up.
Nice. Yeah, I guess another thing that I just wanted to mention too is that there is one of the things, and Sam alluded to this earlier, like there is a new version of the Atom Vertical plugin. They've actually released a brand new multi-stream plugin, which looks exciting, but again, I didn't want to jinx myself by actually installing it before today's show, and that's not usually how we go live anyway, so I resisted that one. But I do want to note that there is, plugins get updated all the time, and they don't usually tell you. So unless you're in the loop, you're not going to hear about it. One thing I do like is that StreamUp actually has a sort of a product that checks for OBS Studio plugin updates. And again, I wish I was organized enough to actually show you what this looks like. But essentially, when I start OBS, it'll go, hey, there's a new version of this. Here's a direct link to download the plugin. And I just do that sort of periodically. And it's made my life a little bit easier because especially in that ADEM vertical plugin, there might be somewhere that tells you what version you're currently running, but if there is, I've yet to find it. So if I ever have any weirdness with that plugin, I just download it and install it again, and 9 times out of 10 that fixes everything. So yeah. Saeed makes this great point that major updates are a great occasion for a fresh install and a rethink of which plugins you actually need and use.
Sure.
So clean up profiles and scene collection, at least for geeks like me. And again, I think that would be true of Sam and I as well, because I think, and this is something about me specifically, is I'm a pretty habitual person. Like if I find something that works, I'm usually happy to stick with that for the rest of time. But at some point I will get bored and I will want to try new things. And I guess the thing we alluded to earlier is that because OBS is so modular, sometimes there are times where you'll just add one extra plugin and it'll just break everything. So you might even want to think about having a portable version, and we'll talk about that in the next segment, where you can do a little bit of testing and you can try things out and you just make sure that things work the way that you want them to work. But also that's a great opportunity just to have a play. And I think that's the other thing I like about scene collections is I'll be like, sure, you've got the one that you use for your virtual camera for all your meetings, and maybe you've got some for your shows or your podcasts. But think about just creating some new ones just to have a bit of a play, just to see what is possible and get a bit creative there.
Along the lines of cleaning up, I have a bunch of scene collections, and every once in a while I'll go into one and find I suddenly have missing items, or I have items that aren't working because I use a bunch of third-party browser sources and things like that. When I had been working at Mob Crush, I put a Mob Crush overlay in pretty much every single scene collection somewhere. And I was able to, thanks to AI, script out an OBS script that will let you do bulk deletions, which is great if you have an issue like that where you're like, well, I have 5 of these somewhere in this, but I don't know where because I have so many scenes and sources. So if anybody's interested in that, reach out and I'll try and find where I saved that and send it over to you.
And yes, Sam sent me a message about that, and I'm like, well, it's cool, but you know how I feel about AI. I'm not sure I want to explore that too far, but I just want to pick up on this.
It does also put a symbiote in your. No, I'm just kidding. Go on.
I just want to pick up on this comment from Saeed, because I think it's a great point, and it's not usually how my brain works, but I do love the idea of it. So he says, what I do is I go to the OBS plugin site and sort by date to see if there is anything new on the first 1 to 2 pages. So again, this is obsproject.com, and if you go to the forum, they have a whole section here for plugins. And I guess you can sort by last update. So probably ascending, I'm thinking. Okay, no, I must have done that wrong. Let me try again. So probably descending. Okay, so that one was updated yesterday. So yes, essentially that's another way of doing it. But I genuinely love the prompt that the StreamUp gives me, because it tells me what's out of date, but it also gives me a direct link, and I click on that link and it downloads a zip file, and I can just sort of drag and drop that stuff in there. But you'll see too the ADEM multi-stream, and again, it's been updated very recently because it came out like a day ago, and I think they've got a lot of feedback and they fixed a whole bunch of things. And if you are interested in that, ATEM have their own Discord channel, so that's a great place to sort of learn more about that as well. So so I just wanted to touch on that. So I guess, it's a good idea to stay up to date. I guess the other thing I would be mindful of is occasionally certain things may require a specific piece of hardware to work properly. And I know lately there have been a few things that have cropped up that have been like, you need a specific type of graphics processing unit to work with this particular plugin or this particular software. So sometimes that's a good thing to be mindful of. And I feel like I don't want to. My big thing is that I don't want to scare the newbies, but we are getting pretty technical here this week. So like, don't be afraid of this. And I do want to just say hello to Cheryl's design and photo art. Sorry, I saw this earlier, but I forgot to acknowledge it. So hello from Florida. So again, we're going out live to all the various places across the world. So thank you so much for being here. And Saeed also makes the point that StreamUp does not notify about all plugins, only a certain list, and that is a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the video and live streaming show. So if you are kind of happy to press that magical button just to upgrade and see what happens, which honestly I did recently when this version came out. I thought, what the hell? What could possibly go wrong? And I did that, and I didn't really back up anything at all. And I've been fortunate in the sense that everything has continued to work the way I expected it to work. So that's been really good.
Right.
But I think what we'll do when we come back in the next segment, we're going to talk about actually how we can download, install a portable version, and just do a bit of testing just to make sure, or even just as a bit of a grounding for trying out new things. So we'll come back and talk about that in just a second.
Hey gang, if you need help running a live stream or optimizing your YouTube channel, get in touch with me. I can help you get set up with live streaming, operate your stream, strategize your YouTube channel, and so much more. Hit me up at samproof.tv, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, and if you do need those live production services, certainly reach out to Sam at samproof.tv. This is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking all about OBS Studio, the updates, and when you should upgrade. And we're going to talk about doing some testing. So again, I've already confessed I'm not always the best at doing this, but I do want to sort of unpack how you could do this if you wanted to. And again, I've got a whole bunch of tabs open, but let me just go back to obsproject.com and I will screen share. And I will go full screen so you can see this better. So essentially, this is the OBS Studio homepage. So you can, if you want to download the software, a fresh version of the software, you can literally just click on one of these buttons for the different operating systems. But what I think we want to unpack here a little bit is just the ability to download and install a portable version. So instead of downloading these things, which will give you sort of an installer app, we can go up to the download option on obsproject.com. And you can download. You can still have those same options from the first screen, but down here we've got a whole bunch of other things. And generally speaking, if I want to run a portable version, what I do is I will download the zip file, and then I will have that on my computer. So once you've unzipped that file, you'll have a version of this somewhere on your computer, and just wherever it is, and potentially you could even run this from a portable USB drive if that makes sense to do so. And what we want to do is if we go into the data folder, and I should say too, this is something that I do maybe every 3 to 6 months. And I never remember how it works, but I did write a blog article on it, and I refer back to that every single time. But I believe what we want to do is go to the binaries. We go to 64-bit. I might make these extra large so you can see them. What we want to do is actually find the OBS 64 exe plugin. So from here, and again, these are all Windows instructions. I'm not really sure if this is possible on a Mac. If you know, let me know in the comments, because I don't really Mac. Sorry, Sam, what was that?
No, I think this is Windows exclusive. I don't think you can do this on a Mac.
All right. So essentially what we want to do is when we right click on this, we want to create a shortcut, which I might need to go to show more options for. I might have face blindness here. It might just be me. But essentially what I want to do is I want to create a shortcut. Create shortcut. There we go. It'll create a new file and it'll probably throw it up here. Yep, cool. So what I want to do, once I've got my shortcut, I can right click on this. I can go to show more options, go to the properties. And all I really need to do is in this target information, and this is in the shortcut tab, is I go to the end of this, hit space, -- portable. And that's all I need to do to run potentially a second or third version of OBS Studio. And I can move that shortcut wherever I want now. So as long as the folder itself doesn't move location, because that is part of that information, I can run that portably. And that's essentially what I'm doing with this version here. And you'll see it's kind of small, but it says OBS 30.0.2 portable mode. So that way I can sort of play with things in this portable version. So that's I just want to unpack that because there are a few steps there, and it's not always the most obvious thing.
Yeah.
Okay, this is interesting from Saeed, and I haven't really explored this, but let me just read it. But because profiles and scene collections are saved in a Windows folder, not in the OBS folder, the portable version will automatically access the same scenes and profiles as the installed one. Which is interesting, but I'm actually not seeing my shared scenes, so I don't know if that's universally true. But we might want to unpack that after the show. But I mean, that's potentially an interesting thing to know. But again, if you did export your scene collection from somewhere else, maybe if you're working on a different computer, you can import that and go from there. So, I guess, you know, in terms of testing, is this something you've done a lot of in the past, or are you a bit reckless like me and just have a go? Because I know your setups are quite elaborate at times.
I mean, so I have two PCs. You know, I have the kitten cam, and then I have this computer here. So for all intensive purposes, I will install things first on this PC and mess around with it before I do anything on the kitten cam. So I guess that's my testing period. But at the same time, I'm just doing it. Like, maybe I have backed up stuff in the past year. Probably I have not. But yeah, for the most part, that's as close to testing as I really go on, at least on OBS.
So potentially do what we say, not necessarily what we do.
Yeah.
But like I say, though, as someone who's been using this for a few years now, I've only ever had one upgrade that burnt me, and like it's never been an issue since. So so just keep that in mind. But you know, once you've got that, you can sort of play with this, and this is a great place to experiment. This is often, as someone who sort of demonstrates how to use OBS Studio a lot, I do use that second version to do tutorials a lot of the time, because I don't want to mess up the things that are in my main version, but also I might be using that main version to stream out the tutorial in real time or even record it locally. Yeah. So it is certainly a great thing to have a bit of a play with. And again, even if you're maybe a little bit reluctant to jump into the deep end on OBS, this can be a good place to sort of experiment and play. So yes, it's definitely worth checking out. So I must admit, Sam, I feel like I've gotten through most of the content much quicker than I expected to. So I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to explore.
I mean, I think there are a bunch of other updates that did come out, and we could kind of go over some of those things, like the ATEM multi-stream, and there's some plugins that came out recently, aside from the chapter marker integration. Although I'm losing it on the plugins right now. But yeah, so ATEM did release a multi-streaming plugin in addition to their vertical, which it seems like everyone seems very excited about it. And I'm like, do these people just not know that they can do like StreamYard and Restream, or they know they can and they don't want to pay the amount, which that's fair. I have not tested this yet, and from my understanding of how this would run, it is going to use more of your bandwidth, because you are going to be running multiple streams out to different places. Though I had put a comment on Twitter, and ATEM made it sound like the load on your actual computer, as far as like CPU and GPU, was like minimal. So if you do have a big connection, like a fiber connection, this might be a good, easy way to do things.
And I guess that's the thing, in the language that they've got on this landing page, and this is at atem.tv, they actually say quite explicitly, it lets you go to live on as many platforms as possible, completely free, stop paying for expensive multi-streaming services, and make the full use of your internet bandwidth. And if you have good internet bandwidth, that's amazing. But if you don't, if you live in, I don't know, certain parts of Australia, and the internet's pretty dicey at the best of times, I mean, there's definitely a trade-off to be explored there. But I kind of, and maybe this is a conversation for another time, but I'm playing a lot with sort of repurposing existing content in a lot of different places at the moment. And a part of me, like I've always sort of wanted to push out our lives as far as they will go to all the various places,
Yeah.
but increasingly I'm kind of wondering if we shouldn't just pick one or two places and just say, this is where we are, come and join us here, or, you know, good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess
No, I definitely feel that.
yeah, yeah. So I guess, like, and again, just in terms of showing you this, and especially if you're a Twitch user, this is where it probably gets quite interesting because of those new Twitch features and how they're supported by this particular plugin. And again, because Atom also created that vertical plugin, they've actually considered, you know, which destinations are getting the horizontal version, which one are getting the vertical version. And they've also got those enhanced broadcasting features and that video on demand track as well. So again, it kind of depends on how elaborate your setup is going to be as to whether these things are particularly useful or not. But I mean, it's literally free. So I mean, it's nothing to hurt you actually trying it out and exploring. And as much as I'm not completely sold on the multi-stream plugin, I do love the vertical one, and I just use that religiously all the time.
No, for sure. And I do think, you know, the ability to do both the horizontal and the vertical is great. Whereas with some of the other services out there, that is not something that they're really capable of at this time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it doesn't seem like that great a challenge, but it clearly is. And the thing, again, I might even just bring up the vertical plugin and talk you through this. Because the thing that this particular integration does, which is really interesting, is that it'll give you, and again, I don't even know, it doesn't seem like they've got a screenshot of what I want to unpack here, but essentially it'll give you two canvases, and one is horizontal and one is vertical, and you can link the vertical and horizontal ones together. So if you go to different scenes, those things will be available to have a look at. So and it's quite sophisticated in the sense that it's not just cropping and centering you. It's like you have complete control, and you can use the same sources or different sources in every single scene. So you can, even if you're not actually going live, it can be quite a nifty way of just creating a slightly different branded version of the same presentation that you can maybe repurpose somewhere else. And in some ways, that's the thing that I like to use it for, is that I just have a vertical version of my recordings. And often I'll just take Sam's recording and put it up the top, and then I can cut that up for YouTube Shorts and TikTok videos and Reels and that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, when we do this show, I'm primarily using my OBS to act as a virtual camera so that you guys can all see me here as a full screen, but then I'm also recording the vertical version where it's me and then John above me, so that we're both on screen at the same time. So yeah, it's great to have that sort of dual canvas ability.
And that's sort of a funny quirk of Sam and I, is that he brings us both together into that canvas, so it's basically ready to go. Whereas I like to have separate recording, so I can, and it's probably me being a control freak, so I can go into my video editing software and very carefully piece things together. So it's probably a personality quirk more than anything. Saeed says that he prefers the installers of plugins rather than the zip versions because you can uninstall them that way. That's
sure.
A good call out.
Yeah, for sure. It's just always easier.
Okay, cool. So I am kind of curious if you have maybe upgraded, and maybe even outside of OBS Studio, do you have any upgrade horror stories that you regret, a time that you wish you may have held off a little bit longer before committing to that new version? I'd love to hear about those in the chat if you do have them. Like I said, I'm as a person, I'm fairly risk adverse, but when it comes to technology, there's not a lot that I haven't been able to sort of, reverse if I really needed to. So I do like to have a bit of a play, but I know that's not for everybody. And I know different people, like they have different challenges when it comes to this stuff. And some people, they get the tech, but maybe they don't want to be on camera, or they're not particularly confident. And sometimes the reverse is true as well. So let us know if you've got any of those upgrade horror stories, even if they're not anything to do with OBS. I'd love to hear about them. Do you have any examples, Sam?
God, I was trying to think back to what happened that when I made that one big OBS update and like it just broke, and I can't really remember what the outcome was. It was either that all of the cameras were just black or like it just wouldn't stream. I don't remember anymore, but like it ended up, yeah, being a thing where I had to systematically remove all of the plugins and then one by one bring them in to see what was working and what wasn't. And, you know, generally, if you do make a big update with OBS, and something is going wrong, that is going to be the troubleshooting method, is just get rid of all the plugins and then start bringing them in and see which one breaks it, and then wait for that plugin to get updated. And if that doesn't work, then you scream and shout in their Discord until somebody makes it make sense.
And sometimes, like, it may have just been a plugin that you install just to have a play with, and you don't even use anymore, but it's sitting in the background somewhere, and you need to sort of figure out where it is and make it go away. But I guess this is a great call out from Saeed as well. So the major version updates are, so where it went from 29 to 30, for example, those are the places where major parts of the software are being rewritten potentially. And this is where the plugin compatibility issues can arise. And again, there was a time, and I think it probably was for that particular upgrade, where like everybody in all the Facebook groups and all the forums were like, just wait, don't do it now. I know it's really tempting to press that button, but just hold off. And sometimes
that was a big one.
Yeah, that was a little bit scary, and I think that was actually one that I really did hold off for a really long time. And at some point, I thought, I just need to commit and see what happens. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But the other thing too is a lot of the developers are really good at sharing upgrades. And again, if you go back to those plugin options, you can see how recently they were upgraded. I'm actually just sort of curious if WordPress has this thing where it says, this has been tested and works with the current version, but I don't know that that OBS has that in their forums. But again, I mean, you can definitely go in. You can, and again, let me share this so you know what I'm talking about. So if you go into any of the plugins here, you can sort of see the overview, the information, the upgrades, and the reviews. And if you go into the reviews, and every single one of them says, nothing works. Maybe hold off on this one. Definitely sort of keep that in mind. Again, you can check out the history. You can do the discussion. You could probably ask a question. Like, this is probably a good place to feedback information to the developers. But also, just keep in mind that a lot of the time people are offering their expertise here for free, and be nice to them. We like the developers. They're our friends.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and someone is saying,
hey, Nathan.
A friend of Sam's by the sound of things.
Yep.
Saeed is saying also test all your Stream Deck buttons because you never know. And again,
sure.
Because I had that issue upgrading the OBS plugin in Stream Deck, I literally uninstalled it and reinstalled it and everything was good again. But and again, this might just be me being a control freak, but whenever I'm doing a new presentation, I actually just recreate all my buttons just to make sure. And I will... I often put them in order. So even if I'm going back to another scene, if I know, just so I can have maybe, if I've got 5 scenes, I'll just have them, 5 buttons in a row. And I know whatever the last one was, I need to press the next one just to know where I'm up to. So admittedly, the way we've been doing this show lately, and I have bumped something. So I hope I'm still here. I was going to show you my Stream Deck, but I shouldn't do that. So admittedly, I've got the extra large, and every single button on that screen is full of something related to the show right now. So it's and Saeed did offer to sort of help me streamline some of that, and it's definitely something worth revisiting. But yes, so I mean, it's always worth testing, but keep in mind too that live is always a thing. So you might just need to just have a go and see where you end up. Because I've bumped my USB hub, I literally don't have a mouse or a keyboard right now, Sam.
Oh,
And seeing as
jeez.
I'm running the entire show, that's
Oh
going to be a
no.
little bit scary. I'm hoping that it's going to kick. I think it's going to kick back in a second. So hopefully we'll be right. Maybe not. There we go. Okay, yes, I think I'm good. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. It's the joy of live. So I guess, Sam, as we begin to wrap up, where can people go to learn more about you and watch your content and all that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find me at samproof.tv and find all of my social links in the top left there. You can hit me up on those. Or if you want to get more cats in your life, head over to cuteavalanche.com and find the 24/7 cat cam over there.
Nice. Okay, and if you want to catch up with me, you can head over to johnlacey.com. There's a whole bunch of social links at the bottom of those pages, plus the podcast and some articles on different things. So that's all coming up. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you happen to be watching this. Like I say, I've got so many buttons and I've just got to remember where they all are, so I press them at the appropriate time. And especially make sure that I don't knock out that that USB hub which connects everything, because
don't do that.
that can get really dicey. I must admit, my desk is always a bit of a disaster zone, and one thing I did recently was I bought some different power boards, sort of almost like a tower configuration, and it's cleaned up my desk a little bit, but I still need to sort of go in and wrangle some cables and do some different things. So,
Nice.
you know, that's certainly my future. And I know certain people like Saeed just love to clean things up, and he was telling me the greatest purchase he's made, I think in the last year, was a dust buster type thing, just to get all the the stuff out of the keyboards, and you know, I think it cost him all of £15 or something.
I also got one of those just a few months ago, and I was like, this is great. It's just because both vacuums and blows, so like it's pretty good. And sorry to Nathan and Claire who got here at the very end, but yeah, we are wrapping up. I am going to be starting a stream in September, where it'll be more daily and like a longer run, just a hangout stream. So look for that, but not
Absolutely. Today. Okay, so we're going to be back roughly the same time, and again for Claire and was it Nathan?
Yes,
Nathan. Basically an hour before the current time, we will be back here next week. So check out the links wherever you happen to be watching this. Like I say, we go out live on all the various platforms, so keep your eyes out for that. But we'll be back next week. I think I probably shouldn't plan things live on the show, but I think we're going to do a little bit more OBS. We're just going to have a look at some of the different scenes you might want to create as a beginner, because I think that can be quite creative and fun. And I think that's something that Saeed recommended we do a long time ago, and I think it really would be fun to explore all the options and maybe do a bit of building live on the show. So join us next week and we'll unpack some of that. But until then, have a great week, a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, take care.